Ever wonder why some of old Hollywood's biggest names seem glued to a cocktail glass even before the director yelled action? Crushing studio pressures, hidden traumas, and a culture that glamorized nonstop partying turned their drinks from props into daily lifelines. Stick around because the stories behind those glittering smiles are darker and more shocking than any script they ever performed. Hit subscribe and smash that like to uncover the real cost of Hollywood's golden glow. John Barrymore. The night they found John Barrymore rehearsing Hamlet to an empty Los Angeles street, the great profile was swaying like a mast in a storm. He clutched a bottle of gin the way other actors hold scripts, mumbling Shakespeare to passing cars. Barrymore's thirst began as a lark, a Prohibition-era badge of sophistication, but spiraled when fading looks and talkies threatened his throne. He downed quart-sized martinis at lunch, believing booze sharpened his wit. In truth, it fogged every cue card. Studios insured him, yes, but also hired sober companions who failed nightly. By 1934, he could barely stand through 20th century. By 1940, he was slurring radio lines. The man once hailed as America's greatest stage actor died at 60, liver pickled, reputation shredded, leaving a cautionary echo in every empty glass. W.C. Fields. Imagine stumbling upon W.C. Fields' writing desk. One drawer for gags, one for bourbon. Fields treated liquor as co-creator, claiming the burn loosened those devilish one-liners. Vaudeville injuries and chronic sinus pain pulled him deeper. So did crushing loneliness behind the clown mask. Production assistants spiked his water jars with colored tea to fool censors, yet he smuggled real whiskey inside hollowed-out props. On Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, he missed 3 shooting days in a single week, forcing Universal to piece scenes like a ransom note. Audiences still roared, but insurers balked and scripts dried up. By 1946, Fields wheezed his last joke from a hospital bed. Liver ruined, career abandoned, proving even legends can drown in their own punchlines. Buster Keaton, the great stone face, could hide everything, except the tremor in his hands after dawn binges. When MGM stripped Buster Keaton of creative control in 1928, he found consolation in whiskey, sometimes starting before breakfast call. Off-duty, he played poker till sunrise, swigging straight from the bottle each time he folded. Friends blamed a crushing studio system and a bruising divorce. Keaton blamed no one, saying drink was another stunt. During what? No beer? Cameras rolled as he hiccuped through dialogue, the director silently counting ruined takes. MGM released him. He drifted into too-real obscurity, once borrowing cash from extras he'd inspired. Only late-life television rediscovered him, by then sober, reflective, and mourning the decades he'd surrendered to amber oblivion. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's off-screen adventures made Captain Blood look like a choir boy. Rum flowed on chartered yachts, in jungle camps, even inside courtroom hallways during his 1943 scandal trial. A Tasmanian childhood riddled with rebellion and a mortal fear of mediocrity kept his glass full. He boasted he could drink any man under the table, then rob the table. Warner's kept him bankable with publicists who airbrushed hangovers. But by the 50s, his once sleek frame bloated, and swordplay choreography required hidden stools. Directors whispered about lines lost to tremors. The Sun Also Rises almost dropped him for physical unreliability. Flynn died at 50 with the heart of a 70-year-old and the resume of a fallen comet. Proof that swashbuckling bravado cannot duel cirrhosis. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy's Midwestern Catholic guilt battled Irish whiskey, and whiskey usually won. He drank to silence tinnitus, to soothe shame over affairs, to forget the son born deaf. Tracy checked into rest homes between pictures, drying out just long enough for award-winning takes. On Bad Day at Black Rock, he vanished for a weekend bender, returning pale and shaking, yet nailing a one-taker that stunned crew. Katharine Hepburn became unofficial guardian, hiding bottles and dragging him to AA meetings, but Tracy called sobriety a role I can't play. His health crumbled. Diabetes, ulcers, hypertension, forcing studios to build sets near his home. Still, he delivered Oscar-nominated brilliance until his final breath, a testament to talent that burned even as the bottle poured gasoline. Humphrey Bogart. Bogey's trademark rasp wasn't just genetics, it was gin-soaked gravel. From speakeasies to Casablanca, his highball rarely left frame. Bogart drank for camaraderie, hosting the Holmby Hills Rat Pack, where Dawn often found him still cracking wise. Yet liquor masked war wounds too, shrapnel in his lip and memories of a broken first marriage. On The African Queen, he and John Huston traded shots between malaria pills, while co-star Katharine Hepburn stuck to water and wrote she'd never seen two men happier to be filthy. By the mid-50s, Bogart's liver ached and his scripts skewed smaller. Throat cancer claimed him at 57. He reportedly joked, "I should never have switched from scotch to martinis," humor hiding a legacy tarnished by the very glass that made him iconic. Montgomery Clift, the boyish angel of A Place in the Sun, descended into a bourbon-lit abyss after his 1956 car crash left his face shattered. Painkillers met Southern comfort in a marriage of mercy and misery. Clift felt studios worshipped his beauty more than his craft. Disfigurement ignited self-loathing he doused nightly. On Raintree County, Elizabeth Taylor fed him lines through a bathroom door as he vomited blood. Directors installed couches just off camera so he could collapse between takes. Roles thinned to cameos. Insurers called him box office poison. He died at 45, officially from a heart attack, but spiritually from relentless self-anesthesia. A genius undone by mirrors and moonshine. Judy Garland. Under the technicolor glow of MGM, little Frances Gumm was handed pep pills by day and downers with brandy by night. Alcohol became Judy Garland's liquid lullaby when amphetamines refused to let her sleep. Childhood stage trauma and corporate body shaming planted seeds of dependence. Adulthood storms, financial ruin, 4 divorces watered them. During the filming of A Star is Born, she arrived so intoxicated that choreographers reblocked numbers to hide imbalance. Studios deemed her uninsurable. Concert halls replaced sound checks with breathalyzer like, "Hello, Tess," yet her voice still soared, cracking hearts even as her own cracked from cirrhosis. Garland's 1969 overdose ended the rainbow chase, leaving fans to wonder how bright she might have glowed without the bottle's dark tint. Tula Bankhead. If walls of the Algonquin Hotel could talk, they'd slur Tula Bankhead's catchphrase, "Red hair and gin, darlin', that's all you need." A senator's daughter turned Broadway comet, she drank for rebellion, for sexual freedom, for the roar of laughter at 3 a.m. Tallulah toted silver flasks in mink pockets, toasting cast and crew before matinees. Alcohol emboldened her bawdy wit, but eroded lines. On Hitchcock's Lifeboat, she flashed crew after a champagne dare, footage famously destroyed. Critics watched her transition from magnetic to mess, arriving drunk to radio gigs and once collapsing mid-monologue. Hollywood roles dried up. She retreated to parties where applause never stopped. By 1968, emphysema and pneumonia, fueled by drink and endless cigarettes, silenced the boldest voice on Broadway's fallen stage. William Holden. On the set of S.O.B., director Blake Edwards kept a bucket of ice on hand, not for stunts, but to dunk William Holden's face between takes. The Oscar winner for Stalag 17 began social sipping during wartime service, yet success only deepened his glass. By the late 50s, he was stashing Smirnoff in fire extinguisher cabinets and calling it emergency equipment. Friends spoke of a Jekyll and Hyde switch, charming raconteur by day, trembling philosopher by moonlight. Drunk driving arrests scarred his heartthrob image. Paramount executives forced him into health farms before each shoot. Though he still radiated steely charisma in The Wild Bunch, close-ups revealed burst veins and drinker's bloat. Hollywood whispered about slurred ADR lines and stunt doubles for simple walks. In 1981, alone in his Santa Monica apartment, Holden tripped over a bedside table and bled out, too intoxicated to call for help. The man who once mastered the Nile and the bridge on the River Kwai succumbed to an 8-inch living room fall, a final, tragic misstep choreographed by vodka. Robert Mitchum. When Robert Mitchum drawled, "Baby, I don't care," he wasn't reciting a script. He was describing his romance with rye whiskey. Arrested in 1948 for marijuana, Mitchum treated scandal like seasoning, But booze was the full meal. He claimed bourbon steadied his nerves after wartime PTSD. Crew members claimed it fueled volcanic brawls. During Heaven Knows Mr. Allison, he challenged director John Huston to a drinking duel, blacked out, and awoke hog-tied to a mule cart as Dawn camera trucks rolled in. The studio spun it as method research. Off-screen, Mitchum's baritone slur became iconic, yet drink etched deep grooves into his marble features. Producers hedged bets with ironclad morals clauses. He joked those contracts were coasters for my highball. Only late-life roles, craggy, haunted patriarchs, fit the face bourbon built. Proof that alcohol can carve a legacy as sharply as any sculptor. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner's beauty could stop traffic on Wilshire, but tequila made it swerve. Raised in a strict Carolina household, she rebelled in Technicolor, late-night flamenco bars in Madrid, sake benders in Tokyo, rum-soaked beach fires in Acapulco. Liquor became both armor and amplifier, emboldening her to spar with MGM bosses who called her accent too raw. She once crashed Frank Sinatra's Las Vegas dressing room, wielding a champagne magnum like a saber, daring reporters to print it. Yet alcohol chipped at her self-esteem. Swelling and insomnia forced makeup artists to paint cheekbones she'd once flashed naturally. On the night of the iguana, director John Huston rationed her drinks with poker chips. She won every hand, lost every morning. By the 70s, she hid flasks in oxygen tank carriers to placate emphysema, turning London hotel suites into twilight hideouts. Her voice in later interviews, gravelly, wistful, confessed, "I either drank to live or lived to drink. I forget which came first." Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin loved whiskey fights the way other men love golf. Competitively, obsessively, and with expensive casualties. The Marine-turned-actor carried Pacific War shrapnel in his back and nightmares in his skull. Bourbon dulled both. Tales from the Dirty Dozen set read like war logs. Marvin arriving with a 6 a.m. fifth of Jack, challenging co-stars to bare-knuckle sparring, then belting flawless scenes minutes later. Directors marveled at his switchblade focus until injuries piled up. He shattered a hand punching a motel wall, delaying point-blank 6 weeks. Insurance premiums soared so high, United Artists nearly pulled Paint Your Wagon mid-shoot. Off-camera, a Palimony suit exposed his volatile binges, with lover Michelle Triola testifying that he'd polish off a liter before lunch just to quiet the demons. Marvin's trademark granite jaw finally slackened under cirrhosis. He died awaiting a transplant, proving metals can't shield a soldier from friendly fire poured straight up. Richard Burton. Richard Burton once claimed he could recite Dylan Thomas from memory because he'd spent 10,000 pub hours practicing. The Welsh coal miner's son found in liquor both a homeland and a spotlight. When Elizabeth Taylor matched him shot for shot on Cleopatra, tabloids crowned them booze royalty. Champagne breakfasts led to brandy lunches, then to on-set Donnybrooks so savage security doubled. Burton's voice, volcanic, velvet, remained bankable. Yet producers dreaded delays. On Anne of the Thousand Days, he collapsed after 47 takes, pulse spiking at 180. He hoarded antibiotics to battle the gastric bleeding that followed nightcaps measured in pints. Despite 7 Oscar nominations, he joked the only gold he'd win would be the foil top on a whiskey bottle. Liver failure finally overtook him at 58, leaving the stage dimmer and the Globe's bar tabs lighter. Elizabeth Taylor. Diamonds may have been Elizabeth Taylor's best friends, but vodka chauffeured her to every wedding reception. Child star pressure, chronic pain from a broken back, and a carousel of public romances pushed her toward nightly oblivion. By Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, she wielded intoxication as character research, yet the performance bled into life. Crew reported midday martinis disguised in Pepsi cans. Weight swings and puffy eyes cost her roles. Insurers demanded breath tests before costume fittings. Taylor fought back with defiant glamour, founding the Betty Ford Center after her own rehab, turning private wreckage into public crusade. She survived tracheotomies, brain surgery, and tabloid humiliation, yet called sobriety the hardest role I ever played. In transforming her booze battle into activism, she proved even shattered tiaras can be reforged into crowns. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's icy stare on screen masked hurricanes swirling behind the scenes, often stirred with a fistful of vodka and a splash of soda. Adopted poverty left her obsessed with control. Alcohol offered quick dominion over nerves and rivals alike. She enforced 6 a.m. Bloody Mary meetings with hairdressers, berating any staff who sipped slower. By Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, co-star Bette Davis mockingly filled Crawford's Coca-Cola bottles with gin, turning takes into gladiator matches. Directors complained of retakes ruined by sudden slurs. Lighting teams lugged extra rigging to flatten late-night swelling. Off-set, Crawford's children recalled 3 a.m. cleaning drills fueled by bourbon rages. The memoir, Mommy Dearest, later tarnished her legacy beyond repair. When pancreatic cancer claimed her in 1977, empty Smirnoff minis lined the bedside drawer like silent credits. Proof that even the queen of meticulous poise could not edit her own destructive outtakes. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake's peekaboo bang made her a wartime pinup, but gin blurred everything behind that famous lock. Studio chemists kept her waist sample size with pep pills, which she chased with barbiturates and officer club cocktails. A disastrous marriage to drunken director André Detot created a two-front war: rage at home, reprimands at work. On the Blue Dahlia, she arrived so inebriated, script girl Ruth Hendricks taped cue cards to furniture. Lake still missed marks, bombing takes until Allan Lad threatened to quit. Paramount, exasperated, suspended her twice, and World War II factories banned her hairstyle after women caught it in machines. Public sympathy evaporated faster than her sobriety. Broken shunned, she waited tables in a Manhattan hotel bar under her birth name, Connie Ockelman, pouring drinks she could no longer afford to share. When reporters rediscovered her in 1969, she quipped, "I've hit bottom so many times the basement feels like home." A punchline steeped in bitters. Orson Wells. Long before wine commercials turned him into a meme, Orson Wells was toasting every triumph and drowning every setback in rivers of Rioja and cognac. The wunderkind who stunned Hollywood with Citizen Kane at 25 discovered that the town's only currency, tougher than power, was alcohol. When studio heads clipped his creative control on the magnificent Ambersons, Wells sank into marathon benders at Musso and Frank, rhapsodizing about lost final cuts to anyone within earshot. On The Lady from Shanghai set, he'd vanished to down bourbon in coastal taverns, returning with slurred lines and brilliance in equal measure. Crew members kept duplicate call sheets, one for the schedule, another for the inevitable delays. When Mr. Wells and Mr. Jim Beam held meetings, his waistline ballooned, financiers fled, and the man once heralded as cinema's Mozart was reduced to narrating B-movies to pay bar tabs. By the 1970s, he joked, "My doctor told me to stop having intimate dinners for 4, unless there are 3 other people." Genius survived, but studios stamped high risk on every Wells proposal, proving that even the sharpest vision can blur beyond focus when the bottle is the lens. Dean Martin. Dean Martin's trademark croon sounded effortless, perhaps because half the vowels were smoothed by scotch. On stage with the Rat Pack, he played the lovable lush, stumbling through jokes and sipping what audiences assumed was apple juice. Insiders swore differently. Before a Vegas curtain rose, Martin had already knocked back 2 bourbons for courage and another for comic timing. The drunk act became brand identity. Recording executives begged him never to sober up. Yet the persona masked grief over a failed first marriage and stage fright so severe, he once vomited mid-monologue, wiped his chin, and kept singing. In film, producers scheduled his dialogue before noon, knowing afternoons disappeared in martini haze. Friends recalled him nodding off between camera resets on airport, waking only when someone whispered, "Action." Still, chart success and box office draws persisted, until his son's 1987 death shattered the act. Martin retreated to darkened rooms, drinking without punchlines, voice failing. He died on Christmas night 1995, lungs and liver clouded, a showman who made inebriation look charming until it took the final bow. Mickey Rooney. Behind the grin that sold millions of war bonds was a pint-sized dynamo battling gallon-sized demons. Fame hit Mickey Rooney at 17, when Andy Hardy money poured faster than Prohibition speakeasy taps. MGM granted him a personal bartender in his dressing room, a temptation he treated like a toy. 5 failed marriages, 2 bankruptcies, and the trauma of World War II tours intensified his habit. Castmates on Breakfast at Tiffany's described him swigging rye from mouthwash bottles between makeup calls, a coping mechanism for the yellow-face role he later regretted. Alcohol-fueled gambling sprees left him sleeping in Beverly Hills guest houses he once owned. Comebacks in the 70s faltered when he arrived to set glassy-eyed, prompting directors to film wide shots so slurs wouldn't show. Yet late-life stage gigs and Christian faith eventually steered him toward sobriety, though not before the bottle shrunk a giant of early Hollywood to a cautionary footnote: Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's descent might be Hollywood's starkest morality fable. From Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye ingenue to Skid Row tragedy within a decade. Booze first arrived as liquid confidence against predatory directors. Soon it became a passport to scandalous headlines. Her affair with co-stars Franchot Tone and Tom Neal erupted into a fistfight that landed Tone in a coma. Studios blacklisted her, and Payton signed a $100,000 contract with independent schlockhouse Poverty Row, spending half on champagne before cameras rolled. By 1955, she hawked staged pinup photos in dive bars, trading autographs for shots of gin. Arrests for public intoxication piled up. Relatives found her sleeping under newspaper blankets outside Hollywood and Vine, empty vodka bottle as pillow. Payton attempted a memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, but royalties evaporated into tavern tills. She died at 39 from heart and liver failure, her once glamorous face bloated beyond recognition, a horrific reminder that alcohol can drain star power faster than any box office bomb. Robert Walker. Moviegoers remember Robert Walker's eerie charm in Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, but few know those unsettling eyes were red-rimmed from bourbon nights designed to hush wartime trauma and a painful divorce from Jennifer Jones. The shy Nebraskan hated publicity junkets, a flask hid in every suit pocket, a security blanket against reporters' flashbulbs. During Since You Went Away reshoots, he arrived so intoxicated director John Cromwell filmed him prone on a couch, rewriting dialogue to match his lethargy. MGM psychiatrists prescribed bromides. He washed them down with scotch, creating lethal synergy. On August 28, 1951, a doctor injected Walker with sodium amytal to calm drunken agitation. He stopped breathing minutes later, dead at 32. Hollywood spun the tragedy as medical misadventure, but colleagues whispered that alcohol wrote the prescription long before any needle touched his arm. Allan Lad. Allan Lad stood tall on screen even at 5'6", but off-set he needed liquor to feel it. Childhood poverty and chronic insomnia forged a restless spirit eased only by vodka and secondal cocktails. While filming Shane, director George Stevens noted the star's trembling hands and arranged long lens shots to hide instability. Lad's boyish looks masked cirrhosis swelling. After hours, he secluded himself in motel bathtubs filled with ice, sobering up for dawn gunfights. Studio memos labeled him emotionally fragile, yet budgets ballooned when he was cast, until a self-inflicted gunshot in 1962, officially ruled accidental during a drunken stupor, scared insurers away. He died 2 years later from an alcoholic overdose compounded by tranquilizers, proving the quietest gunslinger fought battles no duel could settle. Bela Lugosi. Typecast as Dracula, Bela Lugosi soon drank like the Count, seeking solace in Takagi wines and morphine vials. The Hungarian émigré felt trapped by capes and fake fangs when studios refused dramatic roles. Vodka dulled humiliation. On White Zombie, he arrived reeking of brandy, causing crew to light extra candles to mask fumes. By 1948's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, line readings required cue cards the size of tombstones. Bankruptcy followed, and Lugosi toured spook shows in small-town theaters, swaying behind coffins as teenagers heckled. His publicized 1955 detox, first major star to admit addiction, briefly revived sympathy, but gigs dwindled to Ed Wood's bargain bin epics, filmed between methadone doses. Lugosi passed in 1956, buried in full Dracula regalia, a bittersweet symbol of a man whose blood was type O neg. and 80 proof. Peter O'Toole. Though slightly beyond Hollywood's golden age, Peter O'Toole embodied its last outlaw spirit, soaked in Guinness and poetry. The Irish-born actor rocketed to fame as Lawrence of Arabia, then celebrated by challenging co-star Omar Sharif to drink every bar in London dry. Liver damage by 1965 forced surgeons to replace most of his stomach, yet O'Toole left the ward requesting a pint for medicinal cheer. On the line in winter, he drained cognac between Shakespearean tirades, daring producers to find another king. 8 Oscar nominations never culminated in a win, which he blamed, half seriously, on Academy voters' resentment of his liquid lifestyle. Even after swearing off hard booze in the 80s, he held court at Irish pubs with cranberry juice, spinning yarns of nights he couldn't remember. O'Toole's final roles gleamed with sober clarity, but his legend remains pickled in myth. A reminder that sometimes the desert's fiercest mirage isn't water, but whiskey. Extra. And there we have it. 25 glittering icons whose greatest rival wasn't a co-star, a critic, or a changing industry, but the silent amber tide swirling in crystal glasses. Their achievements remind us how talent can burn bright enough to light up decades of cinema, yet still be snuffed by a single, unquenchable thirst. If these stories moved you, share them, because awareness can redraw destinies faster than fame ever could. Smash like, tap subscribe, and tell us in the comments, which star's struggle surprised you most and why? Remember, the past can't change, but its lessons can. Stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and as always, keep your own script in focus.